The Jerry Dipoto Show, presented by Seattle Pump and Equipment on Seattle Sports.
Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Mike.
Well, here we are, 4 games left to play. Obviously, the last week hasn't gone the way anybody had hoped that it would. What has the last week been like from your perspective?
Clearly disappointing. We've just not played very well over the course of the last week, and it's in a variety of different ways. But this is the end of the line for us. We've got 4 games. We have found ways to make it more difficult for ourselves, and then we've found ways to to go and achieve whatever that difficult thing was. So, if our team has shown anything, it's that they're not afraid of the tough moment, and we just created an incredibly tough moment. So, we're going to have to somehow get ourselves into a position over these next 4 days where we do, amazing things, because we created a situation where we're going to have to.
What would you like to see the team do in these last 4 games?
Just play well. And you can't really control outcomes. I'd like to tell you, hey, we got to win 4 games. It's just play well. If we do that, our talent is really good. And for the last 3 months, in general, we've been one of the better teams in the league. We have played quite well over a long stretch of time, and we have not played well here over a smaller stretch of time. And if we just go out there and play our game. And, last night I thought we did a lot of really good things. Unfortunately, the lack of contact, really got us, and then we were not able to deliver that big hit. But it goes just 26 men. Go out and do the thing that you do and play well and give us a chance.
Jerry, what the heck happened with Neris last night?
I don't know. I'm not Hector Neris. He was yelling, and it was very unusual. I don't know if it was a carryover from anything that had gone on in the past, but it was I'd never seen anything quite like it, and fortunately it didn't escalate any further than it did.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to ask you, and I guess you've already sort of answered it, but just the oddity of it. Is there – where does
Do you know of any history? I'm trying to, as Salk said, the whole Clemens when he was, roid raging and Piazza and everything. I never, ever, ever, ever have seen a pitcher do that and come at a player of that regard. Is there any backstory to some of this, any background that we do not know about?
Not that I'm aware. I know Julio hit a bomb off Neris in Houston, and I don't know if that was a carryover moment. Big leaguers tend to move on from those types of things. But beside that, I really can't tell you. I don't know. Frankly, it wasn't even the most unusual moment of the series. So it was one of those. You've got pitchers yelling at hitters and fans throwing balls that hit pitchers. It was a very unusual couple of days.
Those are 2 things I don't think I've ever seen. I was more curious, just as a former pitcher. Where are those lines in terms of what's celebration and what is crossing the line and inappropriate?
That line was erased some time back, and while the episode yesterday was unique in its time, I don't think it's really unique in the history of the game. If you go back and you look at baseball in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when brushback pitches and maybe a more, less, I guess less of a brotherhood among major leaguers and more of a rivalry. And I think you see moments like that, and some pop up more vividly, like a Juan Marichal, John Roseboro moment, and some more, even in the 90s when we were playing, where you would get the veteran pitcher who wasn't afraid to put the glove in front of his mouth or get close to home plate and let the younger hitter know, where he stood. It was a unique moment, and I don't think it really defined any part of the game yesterday. It was just a moment.
Could it define and continue to define the rivalry, though, Jerry? We remember the All-Star game and in the draft, and the poor commissioner couldn't even get the Houston Astros name out of his mouth before a cascade of boos, and certainly the emotion in the building was ramped up awfully high over these 3 days. Could it continue to build a pretty neat rivalry with these guys?
I don't know how much more you can get. I think at the end of the day, we respect them. They've run the division for a number of years. We we don't like them. We want to beat them each time we line up on the field. And I think they feel the same way about us. I think they, over the course of these last few years, and they've even been audible about it, expressing that they've, their respect for our club has grown. And, I think the good thing is that they see us as a threat, and that's something moving forward. And that's where rivalries are stoked. You don't have a rivalry when one team tends to roll the other. You have a rivalry when there's a mutual respect and a talent level that the outcome could fall either way.
We often talk about the unpredictability of baseball, and maybe this year, for me anyway, has been about as unpredictable as any I could think of, and it has felt like every time you have a beat on what this team is going to do next, it turns and goes in the other direction. But I kind of went through some surprises that I've had this year, Jerry. What would be high on your list of surprises, things that you just didn't see coming this season for this team?
I don't know if there really are that many surprises. I've called it or talked about the uneven, the uneven results that we have achieved. And, until very recently, the second half really couldn't have been much better for us. And the first half was a little bit of a rough spot. I don't really think that's wildly unexpected of a team who is generally still trying to figure out its own personality. And a lot of our personality, like where we started today, is just a team that fights back. We dig down, we fight back, we dig ourselves a hole, then we dig ourselves out. And part of that, just like growing up, is making your mistakes, learning from them, and moving on. And I think that's the life of a baseball season. And we've played 158 games, and we've learned that about ourselves, is that we are, we're making our mistakes. Hopefully we're learning from them, and that will allow us to grow moving forward. But none of it's really surprising.
Where do you think some of that personality comes from, the ability to bounce back from some of those moments?
Oh, the personalities in the room. I do think it's like anyone else, and we talked about it last week. When you win a game, and unfortunately in the last week we've only won the one, but when you win a game, you feel like you're on top of the world. When you're at this stage in a pennant race, and when you lose one, you feel like the world just ended. And then you get into the clubhouse, and you need guys like Gino Suarez. You need guys that can keep it, that can keep it loose. And guys, we've been here before. We can do it again. And we do have that group. I think JP has a lot of that, where it's, there's a can-do type of attitude with the group in the clubhouse. And part of it is just making sure that that every day you don't get too high or too low and allow the emotion of the moment to take you over.
In this playoff push here down the stretch, Jerry, what has Texas done well? Why have they been able to catch some fire here down the stretch?
I think their lineup has just been lighting it up, and that's gone on for most of the season, frankly. But here in the last 10 days or so, they've kind of found their next groove. And you go through ebbs and flows during the course of a season, and we saw it during the last weekend when we were down there. It is such a tough lineup to navigate, and especially tough on right-handed pitchers. They do have the left-handed bats. They've got right-handed power. And, 1 through 9, I'm not sure there's a more complete lineup in the American League. So, their stars are starring right now. And, their offense kind of went through a little bit of a quiet period. And they seem to be awake again. And they're overcoming their own flaws. They've had some struggles, especially down in the bullpen. But their offense has really done the things that they've done most of the year that carried them to the top of the division.
How does a player balance that overwhelming desire to succeed with, getting jumpy or doing too much or trying to do too much in the big moments? Scott talked a little bit about that last night, and I know we've discussed it over the course of the season. But what do you do as a player to stay within yourself?
I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but it is really about controlling your breath. And I've talked about it and maybe in reference before without getting too far, into the rabbit hole. But the ability to step back to channel yourself, to control your breath, not let the heart rate start to pound, out of your chest, so to speak. And it's just practice. It's going through practice to make sure that when that moment happens, when the crowd starts to get loud, when the moment starts to get bigger, that you have the ability to just focus on managing your own breath. Because if you do that, now you have a chance to compete in that moment. If not, it's almost going to be accidental. And we have come out on top in those moments many times, last night or even just generally this week, have not been among them.
Can you learn that? I mean, not you personally. Can a player learn that skill, talent, or is that something you're sort of born with?
Did you not help with labor? Did you not help Heather?
Did I? We're a C-section family, man. We don't have to go through any of that. Right. What can a player learn that over time?
Yeah, sure you can. And some are going to be predisposed to learning it more easily than others. And some just, don't ever quite pick it up. But, for us, it's part of the scouting, the assessment of player development is where are they in their ability to control those moments. And it's if you let the big moment control you, we're not going to go very far. And, unfortunately for us in recent games, we've allowed the big moment to overcome us. And it's tough. You look back over the course of the last week, we didn't do the things we needed to do in the big situations. We've also got a little bit unlucky, where we've hit screamers that are at somebody and the game of inches hasn't been our friend. And that's what happens when you lose 5 out of 6. It's almost never you went out and just absolutely gave it to them. That's how baseball works. It's the ground ball that gets through, the line drive off a glove, the fly ball you just can't quite get to. And when you add all those things up with a lack of contact, not commanding the moment, et cetera, that's what it looks like as you lose 5 out of 6 to good teams.
Jerry, how valuable are these experiences going to be for your two rookie pitchers that are thrown right into the crucible at the biggest moments of the year in Miller and Wu?
I don't even really consider them rookies anymore. They managed their entry, through the fire. They're just getting experience in what it feels like when the stadium starts to rock a little bit. And, that is a different feeling physically because you can feel it physically, your body, you feel the vibration as the crowd gets going when you're standing out there on the mound. And that's that they're learning. But generally speaking, these guys have done such a good job over a sample size. They have pitched against lineups like this, and they've pitched well. So sending them out there, I feel as much confidence in them as I would if they had pitched 5 years in the league because that's the way they've carried themselves all year long.
I played a cut yesterday and maybe even the day before from Aaron Goldsmith. I really liked it, referring to your team as a run prevention team, saying essentially that was your strength. Would you define your team that way?
Yes. I think it's pitching, it's defense. Yes. Excuse me. Archie's not happy with whoever's at my front door.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
It's pitching, it's defense, that's how we are built. It's how we win games when we are playing well. It's the thing we do best. It's the root of our dominate the zone mantra. Throw strikes, win your OOs, win your 1-1. And if you do those things, it leads to fewer runs allowed. And we've talked about this, our ballpark is built for that type of model. We are a run prevention team in a ballpark that, generally speaking, will be kind to that roster model. And when we're doing it well, we're as good as anybody in baseball.
We've not talked about this, I think, down the stretch, Jerry, much, but I'm just kind of curious. I know that the toll that a beating takes on a quarterback in the pocket and the impact that can have on any quarterback, even the great Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. The amount of times that Ty has been hit this year leads the league. I mean, it's just an incredible number of times. We talked about it as a tool to get on base. Does it also have the other side of it where it can wear you down and just physically beat you up?
Oh, heck yeah. And I've actually never been hit by a pitch by a major league pitcher, but I've observed many players getting hit, and I've hit a fair number of them myself. And I think the baseball season in general, 162 games, And I don't know, 1,200 players or whatever have crossed, the lines to play in a major league game this year. They're all beat up at this time of year. And if you go out and you get plunked as often as Ty did, you're probably a little more beat up than the guy next to you. And, but baseball races or playoff races in September are about finding a way to dig deep and asking or forcing your body to do something that it probably doesn't want to do, because the nature of the season is so long and it beats you up. And but the way we play the game is, I look at Cal Raleigh and the beating that he takes in back of the plate. I look at Ty and all the hit by pitches, the high intensity and effort level that we get from a lot of our players throughout the course of the year, the high volume of pitches. Our starters throw, as many or more innings than just about any team in the league. It beats you up over the course of a season. And I don't think that's unique to Ty. I just think that his, penchant for getting hit by pitches is likely to make him a little bit more sore Monday morning than most guys.
What'd you make of Kirby's outing the other night?
I thought he was great. Especially the way he recovered from what was shaping up to be, again, like a poor Babbitt luck first inning that led to, a pretty hairy situation. He channeled himself, and that's kind of what George does when George is on his game. And he didn't just give us a chance to win; he took us to a win. And that's what I'm talking about when it's channeling, controlling that breath. Don't let the moment overcome you. And that's something that he has been so good at in his young career.
Biggest key in these Final Four, last thought for me, Jerry, just with a Rangers team that's coming in, you get the win today, you're just one back of Houston, you own that tiebreaker in the wild card. You got to, I think, get these four. How do you do it against this Texas club right now?
Kind of like we talked about going into last weekend, no free bases. We can't give them free bases. You can't put guys on base. You can't allow them to advance that extra base. When that happens, that's when it gets sloppy. Framber Valdez Yordan Alvarez hits a solo homer last night. That happens. He's one of the top hitters in baseball. What crushes you is the 3-run homer. And, I think when you're in this type of series, and regardless of the requirements, what might be required to get to the top of Everest, you're not going to be able to play against championship quality lineups, giving away free bases and putting yourself in a position for those homers to be crooked numbers. You can survive the solos. You're really not going to survive too many of the 3-run variety.
He hit that ball 116 miles an hour?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, I will say, and I'm certain that our major league staff will echo the sentiment. He is one of the best hitters in baseball, and I don't think it's a secret, but the things that he does in the batter's box, he covers all the pitches, he hits everything hard, he hits all fields. It's he's a superstar hitter at the top of his game, and you can't avoid him because they have other stars around him. But he has been particularly difficult for us to solve. But we are not alone in that box.
No, he's pretty good.
Category.
How does a guy like that, though, emerge somewhat late in his career? I don't mean like as an old man, but like he wasn't that level of a prospect, right? And he changed teams a couple of times. Maybe I have it wrong, but my memory of it is that he was not one of these super prospects. How does that happen where a guy kind of turns that on and figures it out late?
He actually was. He was signed to a high dollar, international free agent contract with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but the Dodgers were making a deadline deal at the time to acquire a reliever from the Astros, and it was during the early stages of the Astros rebuild. And what the Astros at that time did, which I think was critical to their outcome as running the division for the last half dozen years or so, they targeted young players that were at the low levels, who were bouncing back from injury, who might have big tools, or players at the complex leagues who they could find high ceilings in return for modest major league performers. And I don't want to call whoever it was they traded. I think it might have been Josh Fields, but whoever it was went to the Dodgers, helped however they helped. And in the end, Framber was acquired at, I believe, as a 17-year-old, was in the big leagues by the time he was 21, and has roughly been one of the best hitters in the league since the day he showed up.
Well, unsurprisingly, I got the story wrong. You did get it right. It was Josh Fields in 2016 that they dealt straight up for Yordan Alvarez. Worked out pretty well for them. All right, Jerry, thank you. 4 games left to play, 4 home games. Crowd should be great over the weekend. An opportunity here still ahead of this team to try to battle back after a tough week. We will talk to you next Thursday, and hopefully at that point we're in the midst of playoff baseball. Thank you.